I feel so strongly that entrepreneurship culture pushes people towards the new idea, raise money, go to Silicon Valley, try to change the world. When the wealthy people that I know, and most of the wealthy people that you know, and the wealthy people in our towns and in our neighborhoods, almost all of them got wealthy and built generational wealth doing a boring business and doing common things uncommonly well. So I think most people who are very excited and into entrepreneurship should shift that thinking, and it would change everything for them.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls around the world? I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of Real Talk with Zuby. And on today's episode, we have got on a man that I have been following for many, many years. I love his insights. I love how he gets people riled up and stirs stuff up. And he's a family man. He's an entrepreneur, a successful businessman. And this is Nick Huber. Welcome to the show.
Zuby, it's about time our circles overlap, man. I've been following you too. I think your mission is amazing. So happy to be here.
No doubt, man. Thank you. Nick, I've done a brief intro there, but for my listeners who are not familiar with you, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, man. I'm about turned 36 years old, live in Athens, Georgia. I have a wife and 3 kids, 7, 5, and 2 boys and a little girl. Actually, she turned 3 this weekend, but yeah, I'm a businessman as well. 3 main entities, somewhere.com. I acquired that last year. Pretty big acquisition. I own a real estate portfolio, Bolt Storage, and then a real estate engineering firm called RE Costlake, kind of a niche business. But yeah, several other endeavors. I'm an opportunist, man, and I think I have kind of a delusional optimism that has me bite off way more than I can chew way too often. So here we are.
No doubt. I can definitely relate to that, man, and we need more people like that in the world. So tell me a little bit about your background, Nick. Where are you from? Where did you grow up?
Grew up to a middle-class family in Southern Indiana. My mom was a school nurse, public school. My dad was a VP of development for a developer in a small town nearby. And yeah, man, just good old-fashioned family values. Grew up in the country on a 200-acre farm. Learned how to work hard. Learned how to make my way in the world. Caught a break and I could run fast. I could run track and field. So I got recruited to go to the Ivy League, Cornell. Had a great experience there. Graduated in 2012, and then kind of the entrepreneurial journey started when I was at Cornell, but it's been ingrained in me since the beginning.
That's dope. What was your first business?
My first business was when I was 13. My dad's boss had some real estate in our local town called Tell City, Indiana, and the guy who mowed the lawn had a heart attack. He was fine, but he couldn't mow the lawn anymore, and my dad, with his crazy optimism that he seemed to pass to me, he volunteered his 13-year-old son to get out there and mow these commercial properties. So if you go on Google Maps and you're in Tell City, Indiana, and you look at the cinema, the movie theater, that yard in front of it, the one across the street, the Dairy Queen next door, I was mowing that at 13 years old, and it was a crazy experience. I wanted to quit. That first day was freaking brutal. I was crying. It was 95-degree heat in Indiana, July. And my dad put his arm around me and said, "Nick, you can quit anytime you want, but it's got to be after your first paycheck." And I got those first invoices paid, and I did some basic math on what I was making per hour. My friends were working at Subway for $6.25. I was, making I think $22 an hour as a 13-year-old on a lawnmower, and I've never went back. I got addicted to the game right then.
I love that, man. Do you think that entrepreneurs are born or created?
I think you have to have 2 things. You have to have this irrational optimism that things are going to be easier than they are, and you also have to have this undying belief, security about yourself. I know so many people who make phenomenal money simply because they're not insecure. That's one pattern I see across the world, is that there's people who are not that competent, not that good looking, not that great as salespeople, whatever it might be. They're below average in almost every area, but they can make phenomenal money just because they're not insecure. And I think that's one of the traits of an entrepreneur, is they're ready to fail. They're ready to get out there and mix it up. And they have this undenying confidence in themselves.
Where do you think that comes from in your case? Is that something that was instilled from your family and your background, do you think? Or is it just a personality wiring?
I think the one thing that was different about me when I grew up, and I can thank my dad for this, is that I was raised around a kitchen table of just building each other up and optimism. And I didn't notice it until later, until I was in high school. And I was like, after a basketball game, I'd see my friends, their dads would just tear them down. And I don't know if you experienced this, they'd get them in the car and say, "You weren't hustling after this ball. You should have made this pass here. You messed up over here." And it was just constant beating them down. And look, I had my fair share of bad basketball games, but I got in the car and my dad said, I'm really proud of you. You laid it on the line. Like that was a good day, a good game. And that bled over. Like my dad around the kitchen table and my mom as well just made me believe that I could do things, that I was good enough. They built me up instead of tore me down. And unfortunately, I don't know if it's the majority of parents who do the opposite. What's your opinion on that?
It's a huge question. I think like most things, the answer is a combination. I think people like to split things into binaries when they're not. So there's that whole thing of, is it nature or nurture?
Yeah.
And I think the reality is most human traits and behaviors, I'd say all of them pretty much, are some combination, right? Like it's not, if it were just nurture, then siblings and people from similar backgrounds would kind of all go on to do the same things, have the same interests, achieve the same success. And we clearly see that's not the case. You know, a family could have, I'm one of 5 children, and the paths myself and my siblings have taken are quite different in a lot of ways. You could say there's actually a lot of parallels in terms of our values and certain ways we look at the world and things like that, in terms of like our core values. The same core values were instilled in us, but we took very different paths. We have different interests and different personalities. And then obviously, like, it can't all just be nurture, because there are people who are hundreds of millions of people around the world, maybe billions, who are raised in all sorts of awful, jacked up, messed up situations, which on paper is like, on objectively, this is a bad upbringing. They have so many things working against them. And then they go out there and some of them achieve massive success. Other people end up in prison. Other people go out and do some terrible thing. And then there's people who are raised extremely well who go out and do terrible things. So I think it's some type of, like everything else, I think it's just this combination, and it's quite difficult to parse out how much of it is nature and how much of it is nurture, because we can't really run a control experiment, not in an ethical way anyway.
Yeah,
you kind of
I definitely hit the lottery. I was past the genetics of my father, the charisma, a little bit of the, extroverted, nature, but then I was raised around 2 parents who loved each other, man. Like my dad loved my mom loved my dad. They supported us. We didn't ever have to worry about, irrational things happening and just craziness in our life that I think causes a lot of trauma and just sets people back in a major way. So, that's me, man. That's where I came from.
Yeah, it's a huge one. You touch on another interesting point there, because I think framing is very important, because I'm sure, just like I know people who have come from all sorts of backgrounds and all sorts of family situations who have managed to do very well. And a lot of the people who come from very troubled backgrounds or who have experienced some form of like genuine trauma and who go on to achieve it, a lot of them actually credit the terrible background to their motivation and their success and wanting to, maybe it wasn't modeled by their parents, but the thing that motivates them is to not be like them. You have the guy who's an alcoholic because his dad was an alcoholic, and then you have the guy who doesn't drink alcohol because his dad was an alcoholic. So it's kind of like, it can certainly go in both ways or somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, it sends people to the extremes for sure, just by odds, right? I think there are a lot of balanced individuals, but I was lucky to have a balanced upbringing and some of those traits, and it's paying off for me for sure. But yeah, not everybody's this lucky. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think it's weird that we live in a time where, certainly in the Western world at least, quote unquote privilege is considered a bad thing amongst some people? It's almost used as a weapon. I'm sure you've had people call you privileged, not in a positive way, but in a way that is to sort of undermine you or to be used in an insulting fashion. What do you make of that?
I think the truth about life is that it's freaking hard for anybody. Like there's different levels of hard. Like what I went through as a kid and the way I was grown up is nothing like the trauma that some people have dealt with and how hard their lives are. But man, it's hard for everybody. Like life is just not easy. It's not easy if you have money. It's not easy if you're really broke. It's hard in different ways. But this life will humble you, man. No matter how much you have going for you, you can't stop the sickness. You can't stop your body's deteriorating. You can't stop from losing loved ones. You can't stop from having serious struggle in the game of entrepreneurship that we know will just humble you to your core and shake you with serious stress to where it's a kind of a different trauma. So yeah, the privilege thing, mean, it's easy for me to say, I guess, but I don't buy it, man. I don't know. I struggle with it. I struggle with it.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly exists. I just think it's weird that in modern society, it's sort of used as a cudgel or seen as a bad thing by some people. I mean, if you're a father, of course, I mean, it's a given that if you're a parent and you're a good parent, you want to give your children all sorts of privileges and advantages, surely. Like it's kind of strange to get mad at someone because their parents gave them opportunities and did their best to raise them well and love them and care for them. I think it's a massive inversion because, by the way, this phenomenon, as far as I'm aware, I think it mostly exists in the West. Like in most of the world, being privileged is like, yeah, of course you want to be privileged. Like that's a good thing. Like, as you said, life is hard. There's struggle. Of course, parents want to privilege their children. But I think it's kind of been inverted in the last few years. Not amongst everybody, but I just kind of find it a strange thing where people use it as if it's, I don't know, like a bad thing. I'm just always like, and even if you, especially if you don't come from privilege, like, don't you want your children to?
There's a lot of weapons, I think, that people use to divide. And in America, they are doing everything they can to force a wedge between the haves and the have-nots, unfortunately. So they look at the have-nots and say, hey, how can we get these people to hate the haves? Let's piss them off about something that maybe they can't control or something that nobody can control. The people with privilege having privilege, the people with good parents having good parents. Let's piss people off about that. I don't understand it. I don't know why. I don't know why. But I look up at like, I grew up a middle-class family. My parents didn't own assets, no real estate, no businesses. Of course, they worked hard. Of course, we never had to, worry about putting food on the table. But I had friends who were worth hundreds of millions of dollars and were great people. Great people. I have them today. Mm-hmm. I think we should celebrate that. Like if you can do amazing things from an entrepreneurial perspective, earn a really good living and earn a lot of money and build generational wealth, and you can also raise amazing kids, I think that's a feat in of itself because so many people fail at that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think a lot of it is just the politics of envy. And I don't think it's envy and jealousy are not a new thing. They've been there in the human race from the very beginning. And collectively, sadly, it can manifest in politics. I actually saw something really interesting today. I can't remember the sort of source of the study. And I always take studies with a grain of salt, but it was actually showing essentially that people on the far left who want to like do the whole eat the rich wealth distribution thing, that they're more driven by class, they're more driven by envy than they are by any form of love, right? So it's not, that's why it's eat the rich, right? It's not feed the poor, it's eat the rich. It's right, like it's hating the rich rather than like, loving the poor and wanting to, hey, I want to help uplift these people. It's just like, no, I don't like the fact that someone has more than I do. It's also hilarious because most of these people pretty much all these people are in the global top 10%, of course. Yep. But then they're looking at someone who's in the 2% or the 1% or the 0.5%, and they're like, no, we gotta take them down. It's kind of how communism runs.
I'm just a firm believer that you control your destiny, especially if you live, like you said, in the West. We're in the top 10% of opportunity in the entire world. Yes, there's issues, but generally speaking, you control your destiny. And it does nothing. It does absolutely nothing for you to worry about what other people have, to point fingers and get angry, to yell at a politician that you need more. Like, look in the mirror, I think, is step one of like, hey, how can I make my own life better? And once my life is in solid footing, then I'll start worrying about my community. And after that, I'll start worrying about, politics in general. People have that all mixed up.
Do you think that this has changed? I mean, you grew up in the U.S. I'm from the U.K. and I grew up mostly in the Middle East, but you obviously grew up in the USA and you're an American. Do you think that there has been a shift culturally in that attitude?
Yeah, I think there was the pendulum swung in a major way in 2016 towards the woke, towards the, eat the rich, towards the just the decisiveness on our political spectrums. Even when I was in college, there was not that much difference between being a Democrat and a Republican. I didn't even care. Like, what am I? I don't know. I'm going to look at both parties and I'm going to vote. I don't really have a big deal. And now the pendulum swung when Trump got elected for the first time, and it got crazy. It got really crazy. We saw it. COVID hit. It got even crazier. But now, man, 2023, 2024 in the States, we can feel it. swinging the other way, and people are tired of it generally. Maybe it's the circles I'm hanging out with. Maybe it's the algorithms are different now that Elon bought Twitter. That's the main place I hang out. So maybe I'm not getting an accurate view. But the pendulum's swinging back. People are caring a lot less about this crap. And generally speaking, people have less patience for this woke idealism.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we've endured like a decade of it. It's the same thing's happening in the UK. It seems like the same thing's happening in Canada. I don't know about Australia, but I just think after a decade of not just like one segment of nonsense, but like all these different narratives from race to gender to sexuality to class to just it's just been a barrage nonstop daily. And yeah, I agree with you. I often say that I think peak woke was around 2021, 2022. I think it kind of capped out around there, and then it just got to a point where even people who are, you know, quite solidly on the left, you know, just kind of what I'd call sane liberals are just like, guys, come on, like what is even going on here? It's just too much. It's too much, and it's so divisive, and it's just deranging.
It's really interesting to see our influencers shift totally, like our business titans, like the Bill Ackmans, the Chamaths, the Rogans, the Musks. I don't know if they were ever on the far left, but the founder of Airbnb, like literally big tech is swinging. That's pretty wild. I didn't see that coming when we were at peak woke in 2021.
Here's a question, and I don't want to get too political, but had the other candidate won, do you think that they would have done that?
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe it's self-serving. That's a really, really good point.
Because Elon put something on the line, but everyone else fell in line kind of after the. I don't know. Like I'm not sure. Like I think Elon, you know, okay, that's a legit shift because he would have been in major trouble. He would have been in major trouble actually if Trump had not won in many ways.
His business, his career, his perception, like big trouble. You're right. He put it all on the line. I'm thankful, but man, crazy.
Yeah. All right, Nick, I want to shift gears a little bit. I want to get into something fun because you put out I love your tweets, man. I've been following you for years, and I know as a fellow, I don't consider myself a provocateur, but you know, I think we both know how to kick the hornet's nest when we want to.
We have strong opinions that are loosely held, I think. That's an important thing to say.
Yeah, for sure. So on the 30th of March, you put out a list of 25 points, and you wrote a few controversial opinions I have today that I think will be universally accepted in 20 years. So for fun, for our sake and for the listeners, I thought it would be fun to go through these.
Yeah, let's drop it in the show notes so people can follow along too. But yeah, let's talk through it because look, I view the world a little differently. So do you. But I will also say on my mirror, like I'll preface this. On my mirror, when I brush my teeth every single morning, it says, change your mind often. That's what it says. Like you have to go through life with an open mind. And I would say 10 of these 25 things I've totally flipped on in the last 5 years. You don't see very many people do that. And I think in 5 years, I'll listen to this episode with you and I might cringe a little bit. I hope, because that means I'm doing the work to form my opinions and thinking on this stuff.
Okay. Well, you had to start with the most controversial one. I think this is actually the most controversial from my perspective anyway. So number one, you wrote, video games are horrifically addictive and ruining kids' lives. Explain.
I'm seeing it, man. Like I'm hanging in the South. One thing about the South, Southern United States, is that you go to a party with a bunch of 30 to 35-year-olds and you're going to be outnumbered by kids. It's just the way it is. Like there are a ton of kids here. We love it. We love that about this culture, but we also see how people are raising kids, and we see a lot of things that we like. We see a lot of things that we don't like. And some of my good friends have kids who are showing every sign of major addiction to video games. Hours a day, coming in and yelling about screen time all the time, nonstop. And these games are designed to hijack the brain, hijack the dopamine, and take over and make you want to do nothing else. And I know, and you know, a bunch of 35 to 45-year-old men who sit in their parents' basements and act like a wizard and cast spells on the internet. So it's like, what can we do as a parent to keep what can we do as a parent to keep our kids like from that happening to at least lower the odds because we can't control it completely. I mean, kids live their own lives. But my plan is to not allow video games in my home because I see the addiction and it's undeniable. It's undeniable.
Okay. This is an interesting one because I agree in the extreme and I disagree in the moderated form. I grew up all of my siblings, all my friends, all their siblings, we all grew up playing tons of video games. Atari, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, PlayStation, like everything up until the current era. And zero of us have any problem with it as adults. I also have 10 nieces and nephews, and most of them play some video games. The ones who are old enough, and they're all totally fine. Like I totally agree that video games actually. It's a weird one because I'm like, I read it and I'm like, there's definitely a lot of truth in it. There are millions of people who are horribly addicted to video games, grown men and children, and they're spending 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 hours a day just sitting in front of a screen gaming, and that's awful. My view is that I mean it's the same. The same is true of social media, smartphones, television, and so on. I would actually argue that video games are better than television, because at least if you play a good video game, there's actually you do actually learn something, and there's a social aspect. Certainly, when I was growing up, I'll tell you one shift that I don't like actually.
Yeah, when you were playing Atari or N64, you were in the room, you were throwing controllers at each other, you were wrestling after a Madden touchdown. Like it was different.
Yes, exactly. So I think that's quite different from having just the headset on and being in your room isolated and you're playing with your friends who are, across the country. I think that in itself is quite different. So I don't want to dwell on this one too long. Like I'd say I mostly disagree, but I agree if it's going to become an addiction. I don't think a blanket ban. I think a blanket ban would be could perhaps backfire.
Yeah, mine. And look, me completely keeping my kids out of video games might mean when they go to college, they're gonna just totally obsess and freak out on them. So, I hope it's like me. When I went to college, I had never really played video games before. I got on Call of Duty and got my head blown off 20 times in a row, and I put the controller down. I'm like, I'm not playing this anymore because I suck, and these people are on another level.
That's fair enough. Okay, number 2. A lot of vaccines are totally unnecessary and are messing kids up really bad. Now, this is one that we might have to dance around a little bit if we're going to put this episode up on YouTube. I will say that I agree. If you can give a YouTube friendly version of
why. Look, there's a lot of vaccines that have been amazingly important for the human race. There's still vaccines that are important. I start to question things when 3 minutes after birth, they're trying to give a hepatitis B vaccine with 20 to 200 micrograms of aluminum in the arm or in the thigh of my newborn baby. When we look at how you get hepatitis B, and it's from being an active intravenous drug user or being a prostitute. That just doesn't make sense to me, Zuby. Like, am I crazy for saying, hey, why are we injecting aluminum and riling up the immune system? Like literally purposely heightening and getting the immune system riled up by putting the aluminum or the mercury or whatever it is in the blood. So yeah, we might have to dance. I maybe already didn't dance around it enough, but some of these vaccines,
people can.
Some of these vaccines just don't make sense. Other ones are very important. I'll say that. So.
Yeah, I think the schedule as well, like especially in the U.S. Like when I look at the U.S. schedule, it is insane.
They got COVID on it now,
and
they got COVID vaccine on the kids' schedule now.
Yeah, I think something that happens. This is a bit of a wider issue. Is that I think most Americans don't realize that there are certain things that are unique to the USA, which I think a lot of Americans assume are like global phenomena, and they're not. So, like, I think by far the USA has the most aggressive childhood vaccine schedule. Most countries have some type of recommendations, But in the US, I mean, even compared to the UK, I want to say it's about triple the number
It is.
compared to the
It is.
UK,
Yeah,
which is a very
77.
yeah,
Right?
the UK is a very comparable country to the US in many ways. And it's like, why is it and even if you just look at the history of it, even from the time, I don't know, you were born, I think it's the number has at least doubled
5x.
since you were born. Is it 5x?
I don't want to quote these things because,
Okay.
people can fact check this stuff and they can find out for themselves. But I think it was 10 to 15 vaccines that I got before high school. And now we're getting 10 to 15 vaccines before 18 months old. All of them, which are putting aluminum in the blood that starts to mess with your immune system and get it riled up. So yeah, I have kids with severe allergies. I have kids that, just did not react well to these vaccines. So it's a major bummer.
I got it. Okay. Do your own research, people. Number 3, this is another. Number 3, fluoride in water is a disaster. Filter it ASAP and get it out of your toothpaste too. I wrote next to this one, I just wrote probably. I haven't gone down the rabbit hole on fluoride, but I'm just like, yeah, it seems a bit sus, but I don't know. What's the research on this one?
And I'm not a fluoride scientist either, but why are they putting it in our water in America? I just don't get it, man. Like, why are they forcing it in schools, in our public water supply, to go and drink it? And there's studies that are showing that it's reducing IQ and there's causing problems. So the dentists get mad every time I talk about this. So do your own research here, but it's not worth the risk to me.
Okay. Again, remember, people, these are things we're going to come back to in 20 years, and we're going to see how these 25 hold up.
Yep. And I'm going to change. I'll say it again. I'm going to change my mind on at least 10 of these 25 in the next 10 to 15 years.
That's all good, man. Yeah. By the way, this thread got huge engagement. This got like thousands of likes, hundreds and hundreds of reposts. So number 4, routine blood work and hormone optimization would keep all these 40-year-old men from looking like blobs and 40-year-old women sexually active with their husbands. Agree, as long as people act on it.
Yeah. I think that the way that primary care physicians, I literally pay, Zuby, in America, I pay $3,000 a month for health insurance for my family. And then I pay $2,000 a month for a concierge doctor that actually helps me stay healthy. So I have the medical system that is designed to fix me when I'm broken and not really look at the root causes, but just put me on medicine that's big pharma is going to make a lot of money on. And then I have my actual doctor who's going to look at my body and say, hey, these are some things we should start planning for. And these are some things that if they're out of whack, your life is not going to be great. But you talk to a primary care physician in the United States, and they are very against, they totally disagree with number 4. I posted a month earlier. I was like, hey, if you're not doing at least biannual or annual blood work and getting a full lipid panel, full hormone panel as a man, you are messing up, especially if you have people who depend on you. I had a PCP all over me, a primary care physician, right there on Twitter, just all over me saying, this is totally ridiculous. You have to look at the symptoms. There's no reason to do this preventative stuff unless you have the symptoms. In the DM, Zuby, he told me that he hadn't done blood work in over 5 years. This is a doctor.
Oh, wow.
This is a doctor who has no idea where his testosterone is, where his estrogen is, where his lipid panels are, which heart disease is the number 1 killer in men by 10. And it's very evident by blood work how at risk you are. But nobody's doing it. It's very unhealthy. It's very unhealthy to live with hormones that are totally out of whack. You can't build muscle. You're super moody. You get stressed. You can't sleep. You can't recover. It's absurd that there's 40, 50-year-old very wealthy men who have the means to do this and have no idea where they are.
I can understand people being ignorant about this, as they are with most things as it pertains to health, but I'm surprised that this would be controversial.
Yeah, the doctors get angry. If you go to your PCP, your primary care physician in America, and say, hey, I want to know where my testosterone is, they'll say, do you have erectile dysfunction? And if you say, well, no, I still have sex a couple times a month or once a week, whatever, they'll be like, oh, no, we're not testing that. Insurance won't cover it. We don't want to know. You don't have symptoms. And you're like, well, look, I'm fat. Like, I don't feel good. I can't work out. Like, I got man boobs. The doctor will say, oh, no, you're good.
Do you know what I think is part of the problem there? Is I think the general population in the USA is so unhealthy now that what is considered quote unquote normal is actually unhealthy. Like the average man is overweight or obese, has some type of metabolic syndrome, has some type of chronic illness probably if they're over the age of 40. And that's just kind of considered normal now, in the same way it's considered normal for a woman to be like 200 pounds plus. It's so common. There's so many millions of people like that now that it doesn't really raise an eyebrow. And people are just like, oh, well, I see this every day, so it must be normal.
To be fair, the doctors don't have time to address it. Like, let's be real. They have 15-minute appointments every day, all day. They don't have time to actually go deep and help these people. But yeah, like a family member, 60-year-old male, went in and had an 1,800 on his calcium score in his heart, meaning like a ton of calcium and plaque in his heart. But the doctor said, oh yeah, we did the analysis. There's no blockages. Come back in 3 years for another scan.
That's crazy.
Like in 5 years, you're going to need a stent, and in 10 years, you're going to need a bypass. If you just take that approach, but that's what they do because they see so many people now, so many people with severe heart disease.
That's crazy. It's not like that in Dubai.
No, it's not.
Number 5, birth control for ladies is terrible for them and messing them up bad. Stop putting your 15-year-old daughters on them. Agree 100%.
Yeah, I just don't think it's good for girls, man. I don't think it's good. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. You might be able to shed a little bit more light than me, but I'm not doing it with my kids when they turn 15 like they did in the early 2000s to everybody.
Yeah. It also changes the type of men that they're attracted to.
Really? How?
Because it's messy. It plays with their hormones. So when women are on the pill, it makes them more attractive. It makes them more attracted to less masculine men. This is actually heavily studied.
Wow.
This is why when women come off the pill, they sometimes find that they are no longer attracted to their boyfriend or husband.
Wow.
Because especially if you've been getting your hormones cooked, imagine being on the pill for, say, 10 years consistently. That gives you like a certain hormone profile, and then they come off it, and the hormone swing is so aggressive that it literally can alter the type of man that they find attractive.
I have a question for you. Why have and
Sure.
You might know, no, but we might not know. We might need to just skip on this because we're going to lead people down a rabbit hole. But why is it that I've seen these studies or pictures of like the average man in 40, 50 years ago was much more attractive than they are now? Like I live in a college town with a bunch of 18 to 22-year-old men running around. Like Zuby, they're overweight. They're not healthy looking. It doesn't make sense. The women, on the other hand, have gotten actually prettier and more feminine since the 60s and 70s. Is it the hormone therapy and what's in our water that's like crushing testosterone in kids now, or what is causing that?
Yeah, it's multiple factors as far as I know. I don't know the complete answer. There are some things which are somewhat obvious to me. There's some which I think could be a factor. So things that are obvious, for example, are the rise in obesity. Obesity drops testosterone. So if you go from 3% of the male population being obese to, 40%, or maybe at that age group it might be 20, then that's going to have an impact on testosterone levels. People are doing less exercise, more sedentary work. People are getting less sunlight. They're looking at screens. They're just not as active. I mean, just like muscle is use it or lose it, I think testosterone is the same. I mean, it's part of why lifting weights increases testosterone levels, because you're constantly signaling to your body, hey, I need this. Like, I need this work. I'd imagine if you go to guys who are like working on construction sites or working on farms or whatever, doing a lot of manual labor, I would wager that their testosterone levels are significantly higher than the typical office worker, especially if that office worker does not exercise regularly, which most don't. There are some people who think, this could be connected to what we were saying before, there are some people who think that it's, the birth control pill stuff like filtering into the water systems. I don't know if that's true, but there's certainly people who think that's a factor. If not that, there are a lot of endocrine disruptors out there. There's the phthalates, there's the microplastics, stuff in packaging, things in food. So, people are kind of eating and consuming this experimental chemical cocktail over the past few decades. And I think it's just impacting us in all sorts of ways. It's impacting men in certain ways. It's impacting women in different ways. But I think that if it's, if it's something that drops testosterone or increases estrogen, that's going to have a lesser effect on women than it will on men, obviously. because estrogen already is the primary hormone for women.
Yeah, I went to the same longevity doctor that I use with my dad. And when I got my first levels drawn, and look, I'm a Division I athlete. I have a six pack. I work out all the time. Not to brag, but like I'm way more active than the average person. I'm also way more health conscious. My dad is 60, slightly overweight, you know, maybe a little bit worse of a diet than me, still active, but 60 years old. My testosterone was 470. His testosterone was 670 on the first draw. I just don't. And the doctor's like, oh yeah, we see this all the time. Like, this is not surprising at all. The average 55 to 65 to 70-year-old actually has decent testosterone, where our patients in 20s and 30s are wrecked. We don't know what it is. We cannot figure it out.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's something that there needs to be people need to look into much deeper, because I believe, again, in the West, the testosterone level is dropping by an average of about 1% per year, as is sperm count. And so if you think of that, like 1% a year is insane.
I know a lot of people who are really struggling to have kids, man. It's really sad. It's really sad.
Yeah.
That's another topic, but man, it's really tough.
It is. I think it's 1 in 3 couples now.
So sad. So sad.
1 in 3. And anecdotally, I know plenty. But I think the official stat is something like 1 in 3. And I think that's defined by trying for, it's either 6 months or 12 months. I think it's trying consistently for 12 months.
That is such a heartbreaker,
and not
man.
conceiving.
That's such a heartbreaker. I know what it's like to try for 4 months and not conceive, and it's a heartbreaker for me and my wife. I can't imagine 6 to 12 to longer, man. It's really tough.
It's rough, man. But, it's part of why I love doing this podcast and listening to ones like it, because there are so many issues and things going on in our nations and in our societies, which are very real, tangible problems, but you're not going to hear about them on, the mainstream news.
Why.
You're not going to hear about it.
Wonder why there's not been a 60 Minutes yet on the average BMI of a 22-year-old college student, or the average testosterone levels dropping by 1% per year, or women not being attracted to their husbands when they get off birth control after 10 years. I don't know why there wouldn't be a 60 Minutes on that.
I think I know why. I think I know why. But, hey, as Elon always says, we are the media now. So we can have more free-flowing conversations.
Yep.
Awesome. Let's go to number 6. Straight teeth is a no-brainer investment. So many people could have 10 times the confidence for $5,000. Now, I agree with this 100%. And I am from the UK, and the UK is notorious for people just not ever visiting the dentist unless it's like super extreme.
Yeah,
the whole idea of like
orthodontists aren't
cosmetic.
really a thing beyond that at all. Like, nobody gets their teeth straightened, right?
No, in the UK, no, unless it's actually causing a problem. Unless it's actually causing a problem, or maybe you're like a celebrity. But even a lot of the celebrities don't get their teeth fixed. And it's kind of funny in the UK, because in the UK, people like make fun of Americans, especially sort of American TV personalities, like because their teeth are like so straight and so white. And British people are like, oh, that's so fake. And then Americans like sort of see like British teeth, and they're just like, what the heck is going on over there?
Just a cultural difference. I think it's cool. I mean, look, I don't feel super strongly about number 6. I don't judge people by the way their teeth look. Especially in ladies, like I feel bad for some of these ladies who get sent off to college with super crooked teeth when they're beautiful, and it would help. It would help a lot. Like these dads will buy their daughters a $60,000 Mercedes, but they won't put them in $5,000 braces. Just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. I think in general, and this is going to sound, I don't mean this in a superficial way, because I'm not a superficial person at all, but just generally speaking, it's good to take pride in your appearance. Mm-hmm. Even just for, like you said, for your own self-confidence. It's not about trying to impress people or whatever. It's just like, if there's something that is, relatively easily fixable, whether that's your body weight, or having some, jacked up teeth, or just the way you dress, or having like a terrible haircut, something that you can do. Like there's some things are like really low hanging fruit, like just go.
It's been amazing. I got Invisalign done, and it just fixed up some, my front 2 teeth stuck out a little bit further, and my bottom were crooked. And like, I feel better smiling. I'll just be honest. Like, maybe I'm vain.
Yeah.
Call me vain, but
Hey, there's nothing wrong with taking pride in your appearance. Hey, that's another thing that's been lost over time. Because if you look back a few decades ago, everybody looked good, man. Like, people were a lot poorer, but in terms of like their body and their BMI, they were healthier. And like men dressed sharp, women dressed, like really well. And yeah, things have just gotten so casual now. You got people wearing pajamas in the airport and flip-flops at business meetings and stuff. And I'm just like, man, what happened?
and it's been a struggle. I have 350 plus employees across my portfolio, and we have a policy at all three companies where you have to have a collar on for all internal Zoom meetings, like video meetings. And the ladies wear like just basically no sweatshirts or t-shirts for the ladies. They have a lot more flexibility in kind of what's a dress shirt, but for the men it's collars only. And like, this was a year ago that I put this in place, and still I'm saying, hey, why don't you have a collar on? Like, we're not trying to move mountains here. We're never going to call you in an office. We're just trying to up the levels just a little bit. And my country club here in Athens is really old school, and we have a restaurant where you can't go to the restaurant unless you have a suit jacket on. And I think that is so cool. I love it. I love going in there when everybody looks respectable instead of folks with, holes in their jeans and flip-flops on. I don't know, something cool about it. Now, all the time, it's not my thing, but I think it's pretty neat.
Yeah. There's a time and place for it. And I think deep down, everyone knows that. And if they didn't, then, they wouldn't bother dressing up for interviews or a first date or anything like that if they thought it didn't matter. So everyone knows it matters.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, number 7. Glyphosate is killing a ton of people. I wrote next to this one, probably.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of the way I feel about it too, probably. But it's a pesticide that is widely used, and it's only increasing in the amount that it's being used. And I worry about that, man. I worry about it. I think that's why a lot of gluten intolerance, because its main use is on wheat, obviously. I really worry about it. So it's something that I'm actively trying to remove from the diets of my kids and myself.
Dope. Number 8. This is something I've seen you tweet about quite a few times, actually.
And the UK definitely disagrees with me here too.
In the UK, it costs like, some of those cars you people have in the US, it would cost like about $300 to fill them up in the UK. Mm-hmm. So you have to put that in perspective. Mm-hmm. Large vehicles are 10 times safer than small vehicles. Don't put your wife or 16-year-old son in a sedan. I assume the 10X is a bit of hyperbole, mm-hmm. but I generally agree with this.
Yeah, it's physics. I think people get caught up because safety crash testing ratings are a scam because they're all single car. They're all single car, meaning they drive a car and slam it into a wall. So, of course, a smaller vehicle can be just as safe as a large vehicle. But I don't drive like a maniac, and I'm not trying to solve for a single car accident. I'm trying to solve for somebody texting or my wife pulling out and somebody slamming into the door, somebody running a red light when I'm driving through and slamming into my door. And if I'm in a Tesla, my chin and face are at bumper height of an F-150 truck. If I'm in a Suburban or an F-150 myself, that other vehicle hits me below the hip bone. Which one do you think is going to send me to the hospital or potentially kill me? And which one do you think I'm going to walk away from? It's a total no-brainer for me.
Is there a particular thing that makes you like passionate about that issue? Because I've seen you post about it quite a few times.
It's the Tesla junkies that call Tesla the safest vehicle in the world. When I look at how low they sit, and
okay.
Like a Tesla is an amazingly safe vehicle. I'll give it to them. I love Tesla, but a Tesla is not going to protect you if somebody runs a red light or a stop sign and slams into the side of your vehicle, which is something that you can't control. What other drivers are doing. So I feel strongly about that.
Got it. I'm assuming the Cybertruck is an exception.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, number 9. This is the one that I think this is on a lot of people's radars, I think. iPads for kids equals crack cocaine, and it's making them dumber because their attention span shrinks and they never want to play or read books. YouTube is also terrible for them because of shorts. Yeah, mostly agree. I think should be used very sparingly, if at all.
Yeah, I was over with some family friends, and they have a, I think 6th grade girl. So what's that? 9 or 10, 11 years old. I came into the living room and she was watching shorts, a bunch of shorts over and over and over again, like literally 20-second clips. Like, how good is that for the brain of a bunch of kids sitting around, number one? And number 2, they were watching videos of a monkey jerking off. And I'm like, why is my 5-year-old and 7-year-old and even 3-year-old in the room, like, why is this happening? Why are kids watching this? And it's not good for the attention span to watch a bunch of 30-second clips over and over again and essentially scroll TikTok on YouTube now. So they don't want to read books and they don't want to play. It's like, you can see it in your kids when they're on this stuff. So iPads are for travel only in my house.
I hear that. What are your thoughts on TV in general?
I think some longer form shows, the old school way that TV existed, was fine. I think the new YouTube's pretty bad though, because these new shows are algorithms, especially with babies and young kids. They're algorithms that are just jacking up as many senses and releasing much dopamine as possible. Like Cocomelon is, very quick cut, no story, songs, like sounds, noises, the eyes are going up, all those stimuli at the same exact time. That was not a thing in Bugs Bunny, man.
Kids love Cocomelon. Good grief.
Yeah, we don't do Cocomelon.
It's crazy. Cocomelon and Peppa Pig. Jeez.
Yep.
It's like, it's funny that you wrote crack cocaine, because like I've pretty much sort of seen that in action, as in like they just hear the theme song and like it's like a trance, and then I'm just like, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy. It's weird. On one hand, I simultaneously admire and am horrified by the genius of the people who make these programs and who program the social media algorithms, just like the people who, there's all this crazy junk food in the USA, and it's all sort of like psyoped to be like as delicious and as more. There's this like evil genius behind it. Yeah,
capitalism has its benefits. It really has its benefits, but damn, it has its drawbacks. And social media, TV, and video games, man, they are totally different, and they have evolved so quickly to get to the point where they are max addiction, because only the max addiction ones win, because there's so many video games, there's so much TV, there's so many videos. It's really, really tough, man. It's really tough.
I hear this, man. Okay, number 11 is another big one. Plastics are killing us. Polyester underwear, tea bags, cutting boards, microwavable meals in plastic, looking at 99.9% of schools and all the meal delivery services.
Yep. I'm lucky.
I think
we're lucky that so many people are coming out with all this. I don't think we need to, there's enough out there, man, that there's an 80-20 to do, and it's like so many people need to do this stuff. Like, get rid of your plastic cutting boards. Tea bags are nylon, man. Billions of particles of plastic are in your water when you put hot water on top of your tea bag. So tough stuff.
For sure. I think that there's a huge entrepreneurial opportunity for someone here. I don't think I'm the person to do it, but surely there must be a convenient and light and durable thing, some type of non-plastic plastic that someone can come up with. Maybe it can't be used maybe it won't be quite as versatile, but it just seems like a huge opportunity here. So
yeah,
maybe I think that as this comes on more people's radar, this one will get fixed.
I think it's a massive expansion for glass. Like, we're buying a lot of glass. We're buying glass at the grocery stores. We're buying more organic stuff. We're buying more food that doesn't have the seed oils and the glyphosate and the plastics. So yeah, these brands that adjust quickly are going to win, and the brands that don't, they're going to keep losing market share, man, because I think people are onto it. Like, there's enough big names that are onto this that it's going to, 5 years is going to change a lot.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because it's one of those things where I totally agree. At the same time, I recognize that it is a bit of a luxury to be able to worry about this stuff, and even to be able to pay for the alternatives and to have access to them. Again, I think I'm not even trying to make this political, but it sort of is. I think if the modern left kind of had their ducks in a row, this would be the kind of thing where actually there could be a lot of unity between the so-called left and right, because I look at these type of issues, and my family background is originally from Nigeria. I travel around all over the world. I see people living in all sorts of different conditions, and a lot of this stuff, it's just like, well, most people are pretty poor, right? So being able to worry about plastics and, glyphosate and like all that's not going to happen. And so I think there's actually almost like a left-wing position here to say, hey, all these corporations who are putting all this stuff in the food and using all these microplastics and all this stuff, like you are disproportionately harming the people who cannot afford to get away from it all.
What happened to that side of the left where they would like stand up for, I don't know, like they used to be it was weird. My hippie friends used to be the ones into all this stuff. Now it's the right wingers. I don't get it. I don't get it.
It's a strange shift in the same way that they've like become a lot more pro like corporatism. You really saw that during the pandemic time, the sort of team Moderna, team Pfizer, trying to force everyone to, I was like, it's not even capitalistic. That's like hyper corporatism. Like you're tattooing the name of a big pharma company on your shoulder.
Yeah. And they made $50 billion of profit in one quarter.
Yeah. Doesn't strike me as an obvious position of the left. But hey, number 12, nonstick pans cause cancer.
Yeah.
I think I wrote on this one probably.
Throw away your nonstick pans. That's the only thing I got to say.
Yeah. Okay. What specifically is in them? Because I haven't really looked into this. I've heard stuff, but I haven't really looked into it.
Yeah, it's a spray that it siphons into the body when it gets hot. So it's a coating that I think was used for. And look, this could be a incorrect old wives' tale about how this all came about, but I think they were putting this on tanks to keep explosives from it, absorbing into the tanks and like shed a lot of this hot stuff that was thrown on these tanks. And the military didn't want it, so they started putting it on pans because eggs didn't stick to it.
Okay.
And I could be totally incorrect.
I'm going to do more research on that one. Yeah. I'm going to do a little more research on that one because I do care about this stuff. Number 13, kids shouldn't drink soft drinks ever. And I can't believe parents buy Fruity Pebbles and Pop-Tarts. I agree with the direction of this one, but I wouldn't be as absolutist.
Yeah, I would let my kids drink a soft drink at a birthday party or on a special occasion.
Okay.
So maybe I shouldn't have said it that way.
It's good for engagement. Number 14 creates discussion. Number 14, alcohol isn't as bad as people think it is. When used in moderation, it's a net positive. I'm a longtime teetotaler. I think alcohol is poison, but I'm curious to hear your perspective.
Yeah, look, I think the net negatives to society outweigh the positives for sure. But for the people who can balance it and the people who it drives intimate conversation and the people who it drives community around meeting at the pub, it's a big British thing as well. I think it can be a positive, but yeah, it's unless you can balance it, then it is definitely a negative.
Yeah, that's fair. Number 15, pit bulls should be banned. Ooh, controversial.
I just think their statistics back this up. Like we don't even need to talk about it. Like over 50% of injuries and fatalities by dogs are from one breed. It's sort of like something that the data doesn't lie, in my opinion.
How would you... So I have a take on this. I have actually thought about this, strangely, because I think pit bulls are already banned in the UK.
Okay.
But I see Americans discussing this one all the time because there's so many Americans who love pit bulls. And I would assume it's also the country that has the most kids who are getting mauled by these animals. My view, I have thought about this. I don't think they should be banned, but I think that the owners, and by the way, this goes for all dogs, I think the owners should be completely liable for any harm, injury, or death that their dog calls. So if you want to own a pit bull and you're willing to take that burden and responsibility and accountability of, hey, if he goes out and he mauls a 3-year-old and kills him, I'm the one who's getting charged with murder. If you're willing to take that on, then I think that's how you balance the freedom aspect with the responsibility aspect. That's what I personally think. What do you think of that?
That's a really good take. I like that. I like it.
Yeah. So yeah, I think if you want to take that risk and you're like, okay, I've really got this and I really know I've got a good boy here, then okay, fair enough.
And then my buddy who makes really good money and his pit bull ran outside and bit the shit out of that UPS guy. Like he's going to be charged with assault. And it's going to mess some stuff up for him, and that's the risk you take.
Yeah,
But that happened last year, and I'm like, well, you saw it coming.
Yeah, it's a weird one because I try to keep my emotions out of it. Like I'm not even really a dog person, but strangely, every single person I know who owns a pit bull, the dogs are like incredibly kind and sweet and amazing with their kids. At least for now, I pray it always remains that way. So like my personal experience with pit bulls has been pretty good as a breed. But at the same time, I look at the stats, and every time you do hear one of these horrible stories, it's always the same dog. So yeah, I think my suggestion makes sense.
I like it.
All right, Nick, number 16, recycling is a total scam and should be abolished.
I'm getting a little edgy with my wording here. I'm telling you, I'm going to look back on this stuff and I'm going to cringe 10 years from now. But man, like 90% of it goes to landfill. It costs 2 times more than what it saves, and it doesn't actually help the environment much. So I just think that we're fed it. And I also just hate being fed a bunch of information since we're in grade school, man. Like in grade school in America, we are fed that recycling is the future, save trees, save the environment. When in reality, it's not true. Like in reality, it costs the environment more than it saves the environment to recycle. So like, that doesn't make sense to me personally.
Fair. I haven't looked into recycling, so I don't know. I think I heard that there are some materials where it makes sense, and there's ones where it makes no sense.
Yeah.
Okay, 17. Sauna is very, very healthy. Most people don't sweat enough. Agree.
Yeah, it's a detox, man. It's good for you. It's good for your cardio. It's good for your heart. It's good for your entire body.
Okay, number 18. This is you trying to trigger me here. I feel targeted by this. Powerlifting as a grown adult isn't worth the damage to back and joints.
And look, there's a difference between powerlifting for form and mobility and core strength and powerlifting for weight. Every guy I know who's done a lot of powerlifting in their life has knee, hip, and back issues. And I'm just like, why? Why do that to yourself? What's your take?
Yeah. My take is similar to some of the others. My take is in the extreme, I agree. Mm-hmm. Unless you're competitive, yep. Unless like you actually compete and this is really your thing, there's a level where it's not worth going past. You know, if you're 50 years old and you're trying to put up 1 rep maxes on the bench or on deadlifts, like the risk reward ratio doesn't really make sense. If you're 25 years old, and the strange thing with powerlifting actually, and maybe a lot of people who aren't really into weightlifting don't know this, is actually in many ways, the stronger you get, the more careful you have to be. Because
the weakest part of your body is the one that has the stress and the risk.
Yeah, and also just because it's more weight. Mm-hmm. So if I ask the average person to attempt a 500-pound deadlift, there's no risk because they can't even move it.
Yeah.
Okay? If there's a guy who's almost strong enough to lift it, but not quite, there's going to be a lot of straining and a lot of like, you know, it'll come off the ground and then there'll be that really nasty like, you know. So it's kind of a weird one. And, you know, 500 pounds, you're more likely to injure yourself with 500 pounds than with 400, than with 300, yep. than with 200. So just as you get stronger and stronger, you know, when you get these power lifters who are up there and, you know, they're squatting 600, 700, 800 pounds, like if one very, very minor thing goes wrong, then you can be in very serious trouble. Yeah. And also your tendons and ligaments don't always keep up with your actual muscles. So
that's what you hear from the bodybuilders,
might be that the
right?
muscle is strong enough. Yeah, it can be that the muscle is strong enough, but the connective tissue isn't. So yeah, that's one where I'm like, I'm like, yeah, I partially agree because I think in the extreme, I think at a basic level, you know, powerlifting is squat, bench press, deadlift. You know, those are all good exercises, and I think most people should do at least some form of them. Everyone should certainly strength train. People could debate the specific exercises, but yeah, going to an extreme level or putting yourself at risk or using bad form, yeah, not worth
At
it.
about 24 months ago, 2 years ago, I started doing a mobility and strength routine every day. Core mostly, glutes, hamstrings, quads, back, sides, and man, I feel amazing. Like it's increased my quality of life. I just walk around feeling stronger. My posture's better. I don't have back pain. I think more people should be doing that, unless people should be doing powerlifting as a whole. But I do. I agree with you as well.
Yeah. Here's another thing, because we were talking before about like testosterone and hormones, is that is one of the hugest benefits that I think is understated and underrated. I think that after the age of after the age of 20, without resistance training, you lose, oh gosh, I don't know the exact number.
Yeah, what's that image
but
that we
you
see on
lose-
Twitter that's burned in our heads of the leg, right? The 20-year-old leg and the 70-year-old leg, and it shows the muscle tissue around it and the
Yep.
that's just such a powerful image.
Yeah. Per decade, you naturally lose a pretty significant amount of lean body mass as you get older. But that can largely be paused or even reversed to some degree through strength training. So it's not just about like being jacked and having a six pack and all that stuff that people tend to think. Also improves insulin sensitivity, reduces the risk of diabetes, reduces the risk of cardiovascular disease, reduces the risk of many types of cancer, reduces the risk of osteoporosis, especially in women. So bottom line is everyone should do some form of strength training. Highly recommend.
My North Star is being a 80-year-old man and sitting in a chair with family everywhere, but like having played golf that day and after dinner getting on the floor with my grandkids and like being able to wake up in the morning and get my grandbaby out of her crib, like bend way down and pick her up. Those things are what life's all about, is like living healthy into your old age, and weight training and mobility training is a massive part of it that almost nobody does. Zuby, what would be your estimate of what percentage of people over 40 resistance train once a week?
Once a week?
Yeah, or more.
Under 20%.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's so sad.
Yeah. Long distance, number 19, long distance running is not healthy. More people should sprint. Okay, interested about this one.
Well, I think people get addicted to many things in this world. Some of it's TikTok, some of it's video games, some of it's alcohol. But some of the biggest addicts I know are long distance runners. I'll just say it. They don't have balanced lives.
Okay.
They run way too far. It cannot be healthy. Like, I don't know for sure.
Okay.
But I just don't know. I don't know if running a marathon is healthy, man. The way these people look, the way they push their bodies, especially, Ironman and some of these longer events, seems a little extreme to me.
Yeah, I have an interesting take on this one, which is that at the most extreme, I think it's true, but I think just in a society where over 70% of people are overweight or obese and fewer than half the population is doing any sort of regular exercise at all, I tend to not worry about stuff like this.
It's way down the list. You're right.
Yeah, I'm a little like, man, you know what? If someone wants to go out and run a marathon, do an Ironman, it's definitely better than the
They're in the top 1
opposite.
percentile of health in any measurement.
Yeah. All right, number 20. We kind of touched on this one. Heart disease is the number one killer in men by 10x, yet nobody gets a heart workup at 35 or 45 or tracks lipid panels. They wait until they need a bypass or it's too late. Make it make sense.
Yeah, especially certain
Kind of speaks for itself.
certain cultures and regions of the world, like the Africans, frankly. Like, man, they have really tough genetics when it comes to heart disease. I think you can do a ton to improve this stuff, man. And it's sad that people don't start thinking about it when they're in their 30s and 40s. Instead, they wait until they're in rough shape.
For sure. And this is a global one. This is a really global issue. As I said before, my family background's from Nigeria. I have, dozens and dozens of aunties and uncles and cousins. And, a lot of people end up getting strokes in particular and not, for many decades, just not taking care of their health until they're in their, finally they're in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and, it becomes a serious problem. So
It's
Yeah.
again a spot of privilege to be able to go spend $300 to $500 to maybe $1,000 on a heart workup. But if you have means, like, and you're listening to this, go get a heart workup. Like, get imaging of your heart done. I'm 30. I'm about to turn 36 years old. I already have plaque in my heart, and I saw it on an image, and I was like, wow.
Yeah. And if you can't afford $500 to get it looked at, just do the
Yeah,
basics. Take care of your nutrition. Take care of your nutrition and exercise regularly. Most people don't.
Yep.
Just doing that alone will, put you in a healthier minority.
Yep.
Okay, number 21. A lot of my fat friends refuse to use GLP-1s because of potential side effects. The side effects of being fat are 10 times worse because of number 20. Wake up.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with a close friend of mine, and he's very holistic. He does a lot of things right. He lives the right way, but he's overweight. We were comparing our DEXA scans, which gets bone density, muscle density, and fat density of the body. And he is 4 inches shorter than me and has 40 pounds of additional fat than me. And I was saying, hey man, like, have you gotten your hormones checked? No, I don't know where they are. And I don't want to do hormone therapy. It's too risky. Hey, have you thought about GLP-1s? He's like, no, I would never do that. It's unstudied. I don't know. And at some point, and I'm not saying this is for everybody, this is not medical advice, gosh, but at some point you have to think about, like, what are the risks of what I'm doing now and where I'm at now? And what are the potential side effects of a potential solution for me? And being overweight, like you said, with insulin resistance, with heart disease, with all these different things, that is very risky in and of itself. So people should think a little harder about it, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. I generally think, I think if someone is in the moderate to just, relatively overweight range, I think the cons probably outweigh the pros. But if someone is truly obese to morbidly obese, then yeah, I think the obesity itself is most likely a greater danger than, GLP-1s or even some of the surgeries and things like that they do. Because there's a level of obesity, when people are 400, 500, 600, 700 pounds, where it's just like almost any intervention, even if it has some major downsides, almost any intervention is going to be better than staying at that body weight. You never see someone who's 70 years old who weighs 600 pounds. That's not a thing.
No, and it's why all the cancer patients sign up for the experimental trials, right? Because it's the lesser of two evils at that point.
Okay, number 22. A normal old-fashioned business is 10 times more you like the 10 times, I've noticed that, is 10 times more likely to make somebody wealthy than a tech startup.
Yeah, like I'm very passionate about entrepreneurship. We can chat about my book if you want, but like I feel so strongly that entrepreneurship culture pushes people towards the new idea, raise money, go to Silicon Valley, try to change the world. That's just how people think about entrepreneurship. When the wealthy people that I know, and most of the wealthy people that you know, and the wealthy people in our towns and in our neighborhoods, almost all of them got wealthy and built generational wealth doing a boring business and doing common things uncommonly well. So I think most people who are very excited and into entrepreneurship should shift that thinking, and it would change everything for them.
Cool. Don't disagree. Number 23. Oh, this is an interesting one. I'm not sure if I agree with this one, but I want you to be right. AI won't change the world very much. People are overreacting today, just like Elon when he told us we'd have full self-driving cars by 2014. It's a long way off. Curious about this one.
Yeah, I think it's easy as an entrepreneur and as an influencer and as a tech billionaire to get in a bubble and think about the world in a certain way. And obviously these people are innovators and we need them. They do make our world better. AI will change things. I'm very open-minded. I have 350 employees. If I can make them do the work of 500 employees, or if I can do the same work with 200, I'm going to be the first one to adopt AI. That said, man, some of them need to just go to Walmart and look at what the average person in America or wherever are struggling with and trying to do and trying to live their life. Like, largely our homes look the same. Drywall looks the same. Doorknobs look the same. Doors look the same that they did 20 years ago. We sleep in a bed that's very similar. We get in a shower that's very similar. Like, the way we live our actual lives is not changing that much. The only thing that's changing is data is getting closer to us. It's getting way closer. We can do everything from right here. They're wanting to put it on our eyes. They want to put it in our ears. They want to put it on our glasses. I think there's going to be a little bit of pushback on that, to how close data can get to us and how intimate we want to get with technology. I'm already moving away from addiction to this phone because I think it's a negative and it's making me less happy. It's less community, less mental health. So yeah, AI, while super powerful, it'll make our companies more efficient. But
Do you not have any concerns about it supplanting and replacing people's jobs?
I do. And look, I'm following closely, and this is something I'm massively open-minded on. I'm willing to change my mind instantly when I see something that clicks with me. But when I hear Elon Musk talk to an AI bot on Joe Rogan, and I hear my friends, build AI agents, and you can talk to them on the phone and try to do the job of a normal human, it's not even close right now, man. Like I maybe I'm taking crazy pills. Everybody thinks that this is right around the corner. In my opinion, it's not even close. So I own a business. I've looked at 50 plus AI tools. I've demoed 10. I've tried to put 3 or 4 of them inside my business. One of them is adding value. It's a note taker that takes notes inside of my meetings across my company. The rest of them have been a massive letdown, but a lot of shock factor and wow factor when you're in these demos. So I think AI is definitely going to change things. It won't change the world as much or as fast as people think.
I really want you to be right. I'm not a worrier, but I have some very large concerns about AI, particularly like the image generation and video generation and the audio and stuff like that. Even something as simple. I'll tell you one that really freaks me out is just the general thing that for all of human history, we've been able to determine what is real and what is fake. You know that you're talking to me right now. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, maybe it's 20 years from now, maybe it's 30 years from now. There's no guarantee of that. Like I already know people who are like posting Instagram videos of them doing talking head videos and they never recorded that video. I already see people doing that. And these are people I know and I watch the video and I can't tell it's not them. And that hasn't existed before. So that freaks me out. Or if you think of like courts and the whole criminal justice system, the gold standard of evidence our entire lives has been video evidence, right? But if we're now moving into a world where someone can create a CCTV style video of someone supposedly committing a crime or a world leader saying something that they never said or something like that, that's the part of it that actually really freaks me out. Just like not being able to know what is real and what is not. So yeah, that's the part that I'm greatly concerned about, and I don't think they've really thought very well through of, okay, well, so many of our systems, our biology itself is based on us being able to perceive reality. And if we can no longer tell what's real and what's not, I just think that's opening up a whole new Pandora's box of madness. Have you seen some of the like AI influencers and stuff, like some of these Instagram profiles of mostly, quote unquote women, and they have like some of them have like six-figure followers, and they're like, this person doesn't even exist, and they're posting photos and videos and commenting, and I'm just like, this is really concerning. This is disturbing to me.
Yeah, I think the court system thing, I think the technology to identify will advance at the same level of what is real and what's fake. But dude, what you're talking about on social media has been happening, and it's influencing our elections. You can see how these countries are building bots and manipulating people at scale. I think propaganda has never not existed, frankly. So AI accelerates it, but luckily there's a lot of people who are trusting less and less and less what they're just seeing and reading and viewing online. But yeah, you're right. Those are valid concerns and super scary.
Yeah. Yeah, we shall see. We shall see. We live in interesting times. Okay. We got 2 left now. Number 24. Crypto outside of BTC is a total waste of time and electricity. Agree.
You agree with me? Okay.
Yeah, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist.
Well, I just think crypto in general, people think it's going to replace our financial systems when people actually want to not get their money stolen or lost. It's a
I'm a huge Bitcoin bull, massive Bitcoin bull, but everything else, not. I mean, if you want to gamble, people can gamble, and you're welcome to try to flip whatever you want to flip. But in terms of, if I fell into a coma and I woke up 10 years from now, I'd have zero concerns about any Bitcoin I may hold. But if I was holding any of the other hundreds of thousands, I'd be deeply concerned.
I just think that it's easy to get into the bubble of this technology and see how amazing it is and think that tokenization is the future and that crypto is the future and it's going to replace the financial systems. But when you think about it logically, it's just not possible to happen. So I'm with you, man.
Awesome. And number 25. Do you know what's so weird? Is there something I thought was on this list, but it's not? Maybe it must have been a separate tweet. And maybe we can bring that up as a bonus point because I think it's an interesting one.
Let's do it.
But number 25, high school kids are numb and antisocial today. They aren't interested in driving, sex, sports. They can't talk to anyone and look them in the eye. It's because they're medicated by social media and what we are feeding them. Also see number 1 and number 2.
Yeah, I think it's a problem, man. Like, very rarely do you see a 7 to 15-year-old kid who can not be on their phone or iPad during dinner at a restaurant and can look up at an adult and have an actual conversation and look them in the eye and shake their hands. So on one side, it's really sad because I think communication is the most important skill of all in life. But on the other hand, it's a massive advantage for our kids and the people that we influence because I'm going to teach my kids how to do those things and to communicate and to not be numb. And they're not going to get addicted to these dopamine drivers like video games and social media and shorts. So yeah, I think when I was 16, I had a set of priorities that was very similar to every other boy that I knew who was 16. Very few of these kids today have those priorities.
Yeah. Here's a question, Nick. As a father of 3, which of these 25 are you most concerned about potentially for your own kids?
I think it's really easy to look at all this stuff and get doomsday, right? And think, man, the world is tough. Like, there's a lot of risks. There's a lot of challenges. My kids are going to be messed up because of all these terrible things. All 25 of these things are me ragging on something that I don't like, right? Generally speaking, I think the world is an unbelievable, amazing place full of opportunity and people who want to help each other. And so I am amazingly optimistic about America, about capitalism, about just the world in general. So I'm excited as hell for my kids. Like, I'm having fun. They're learning. They're interacting with me. It is the most fun I've ever had in my life. Like, I'm excited for you someday when you go on that journey. I'm excited for all my friends when they tell me that they, are thinking about that journey. But man, being a parent is so special and the world is amazing. So I can talk about all these things that I don't like, but generally I don't want everybody to get the feeling that I'm a doomsday guy because I'm very optimistic about the state of the world today.
Got it. One more question. This is a bonus one. I saw you had a tweet about, I can't remember the wording. I'm not going to look it up right now, but it was something about it being a mistake for people to wait until they're 35 to get married. I can't remember how you worded it, but it's probably in your brain better than it is in mine.
Yeah, I think people are getting married too late and having kids too late. And I'd be interested in your take. And look, sometimes it doesn't work out. And you got to do what you got to do. But I think there's something to be said by getting committed to somebody out of college or as young as possible and not getting stuck in the swipe left, swipe right, infinite choice. I'm going to sow my oats. I'm going to travel the world. I'm going to live it up. And then I'm going to make that shift. I think there's something amazingly positive to be said about finding a spouse, getting married, having a family before you're ready, before it feels comfortable, before you have the money, because your older self will thank you, man. Everybody I know over the age of 60, every single person I know over the age of 60, they care about one thing above all else, and it's their kids and their grandkids.
Yeah. You want to know my take?
Let's do it.
Man, I could do a whole podcast on this one. And maybe I actually have in the past. I think that, I think it's extraordinarily nuanced. I think in a more perfect world in society and culture, I would absolutely agree with it, pretty much, with some there's always anomalies and exceptions, but I'd be like, yeah, for 95% of people, agree. I think that when it comes to marriage and the children that hopefully come with that and everything, I think that okay, I'll tell you the best way I could maybe summarize it. I think the optimal is right and early. I think the second best is right and late. I think the third is wrong and early, and the worst is wrong and late.
That is a very good way to put it. If you can't get it right, don't
That's what
do
I
it.
think. Yeah, because I think people who meet the love of their life, like, and I don't believe in like, the soulmate thing. There's obviously many people out there who people could be compatible with. I think that those who meet, men who meet a woman who they're compatible with, of having a lifelong marriage and raising kids together and so on, who meet that person in like their teens or in their early 20s, I think they're extremely blessed and fortunate. I think that's actually one of the, I don't like to use the word luck, but I think like that's one of the most blessed and fortunate things that can happen to someone. I'm also very aware that it doesn't happen for everyone. Like I see a lot of conservatives especially do the whole, just marry your high school sweetheart. I'm like, that is amazing advice for some people and absolutely terrible advice for someone. It like absolutely depends on who your high school sweetheart is. Because not everyone has, oh, wow, I met this girl when I was 19 and it was just, yeah. So I think that's the case. I do also think that broadly speaking, I think if you're a man, let's be real, you've got more time.
Yep.
I think if you're a woman and I think if you're a woman and you're like, oh, I'll start thinking about it at 35, I don't think that's a great life plan. I'm sure there's exceptions out there, and of course they've made it work. I can think of a few who I personally know, but I don't think that would be a good advice to give like a generation of women, unless you just want them to be massively upset and disappointed and feel like they were lied to. So I think as a guy, when you're younger, you kind of have like certain disadvantages in certain ways compared to the opposite sex. And then I think as you get into like your 30s and, you get a bit older, you have a bit more leeway in that regard. You could be, 40 years old and be like, okay, you know what? Yeah, let me, marry a younger woman and have a family and so on. And it's more probable it'll work than the other way around. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting conversation. I think it's very nuanced. I think it depends on a lot of things. I also think a big factor is just people's backgrounds. So I think that if you are from, if you're coming from a stable marriage and you're coming from a good family situation and you've seen that modeled and you've kind of had that instilled in you and you've just grown up with that, I think it's going to be easier in most cases for people to create the same thing and also even to create it early. But I'm aware that sadly there's also millions of people out there who are not coming from that environment and situation. And I think that if they're like 20 years old and someone is like, hey, like just do this, they're far more likely to be skeptical or perhaps less emotionally mature. Even from the economic standpoint, they're less likely to feel comfortable, especially as a man, to be like, oh yeah, I can do that. Again, I see this sort of messaging of, get married when you can't afford it and have more kids than you can afford and so on. And I'm like, I kind of get where that's coming from, and I think it's coming from a good place. But I'm also kind of like, that's kind of dangerous messaging to a lot of people, because you also don't want guys running out there and kind of just have, by the time they're 30 years old, they've had all these kids that they can't afford, and now they're on the hook for various types of child support in some cases. I've seen that too, and it's just like, yeah, you probably should have waited, bro. Like you should have chilled out a little bit.
I think there's so much nuance to this. It's such an amazing conversation, but like it's a priority thing and a mindset thing as well. Like if you think that, hey, I'm just like, that's not on my radar. Hell no. Like I'm worried about my business. I'm worried about my fitness. I'm worried about dating around. I'm worried about travel. Like, okay, then you're going to do those things until you're 35. But if you say like, hey, like I'm looking for a woman that I can trust and that stays cool under pressure. I can trust them and they stay cool under pressure and they're willing to do this work with me, because the bottom line about relationships is it's never fun. It's never easy all the time. It takes freaking work all the time. And that's why like what you said about seeing a functional relationship growing up is so important, because doing it is hard. It's not easy. Like you name the most amazing woman in the world, I'll name a man who has been tired of her before, and the other way around. Like it's just a fact. You have to do the work to make it work. But so many people just don't make it a priority and don't make it a mindset until, a little later than I think what their older self might want. So yeah, super nuanced. I think your perspective is right, but I want more people. And another thing is the culture in some of these cities in America, especially, the culture is just anti. It's anti. We were in Boston, like Zuby, this is a story that I haven't actually told before. We were in Boston. I was 27. My wife and I had gotten married a year earlier, and we were pregnant. My wife was 26. We were at a party, like very shortly after she was pregnant, and she's like, no, I'm not drinking. And all the girls are like, are you pregnant? And she said, yes, we're pregnant. And nobody there was even in a relationship. Well, a couple people were in a relationship. Nobody was engaged. Nobody was married. Nobody had kids on their radar yet at all. Bunch of 27 to 33, 35-year-olds. They pulled her aside later at that party and were like, hey, like, what are you going to do about your career? Like, what are you going to do about work? Like, this is crazy. And she goes, well, I thought I was just going to take my maternity leave and go back. But now that I have a baby in here, like, I think I might want to be a stay-at-home mom. And they're like, is Nick making you do that? Like, be honest. You can be honest with me. Like, is Nick making you do that? And we're in the car ride home from our friend's house, and she's like, Nick, I want to leave this city. Like, none of my friends value this. I feel very hurt. I don't feel supported. I don't feel like I'm going to have community here when I do have a baby. These are not the right people for me. And it was a very eye-opening thing. And about a year later, we moved to Athens, Georgia, where all of our friends had kids, and they do value that. And many of the mothers do stay at home. So I think it's kind of a cultural thing in some of our major cities too. That's a little bit of an issue.
It massively is, Nick. And, it's interesting. I've thought about this a lot, especially over the last couple of years. And something that I think is a bit under discussed is that, so much human behavior is mimetic, right? Like, we tend to do what we see people around us doing and what we think is normal. And if you are in a society or a culture or a city where there are there's few babies, few marriages, you don't see children around, you go out to restaurants, you don't see children, you don't hear babies crying, you don't see it, it can become very normal to not even desire it because you don't see it. And also, individuals and places become less accommodating of children, the fewer children they are. And then if you go to a place where there are lots of families and lots of children and lots of babies, there's so much accommodation for them. And I mean, if you want to make a girl broody, like, let her hold a baby. Her friend has, and this is shown, like, if a girl's girlfriends are having babies, the probability, the statistical chance that she is going to have a child, like, in the next couple of years, like, it shoots. I think it's like perhaps the most predictive factor, and it makes complete sense. I mean, even as a man, I sense it. I live in Dubai. Dubai is full of children, full of families. You see babies everywhere. Just step outside and there's children all over the place. In fact, if you don't have a child, it kind of feels like a bit weird. You feel like, man, everyone else has kids. So even from my perspective, like, when I moved here, I was just like, whoa. Like, you see dads playing with their kids all the time. That one's got his 2 kids, his 3, and it makes you be like, yeah, you know what? I want that. Like, that's cool because I'm seeing it. In the UK, I didn't see it that much. I saw it a little, and I'm an uncle times 10. So, I've got children in my life, but I've been to cities where, like, I now notice it when I go to a city and I don't see children.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I'm in that city for a long time, I stop noticing it.
I want to have a 4th child. So does my wife. But the number one thing we do is we go see our friends with brand new babies, and she holds those babies and she starts to look at me, and we're like, okay.
It's biological, man. Like, it's in us.
Yep.
I think that's actually one of the big things that's happening now in major cities. I'm now starting to hear more people talk about, the birth rate crisis and so on. And I think it's kind of like a positive spiral or a negative spiral. I think once you get below a certain number and you're no longer seeing it and it's no longer accommodated and you feel like the odd one out, if, particularly for women, because obviously they're the ones who bear the children.
Yep. Yep.
but also I think they tend to be more swayed by what society is doing and is telling them. So if there's all of this messaging that's essentially antenatal, or which is all work primary, child secondary, then they can feel like they're doing something wrong. I think that women are far more harsh with each other in many ways than men are with women. I think women are more likely to look down upon a stay-at-home mother than men are, in my experience. It's anecdotal, but that's what I see.
Yeah, my wife felt that. And I think, look, it takes work to be a dad. It's hard. So if you're not disciplined, if you can't not cheat on your wife, if you can't stay committed and do the hard things, then it's not time to be a dad. But man, like, you grow and you improve so much as a human being when you do hard things. You talk about this all the time, Zuby, of like, that's why we work out. That's why we start companies. That's why we try things where we're likely to fail. Something about having a kid, man, it's just makes you better as a human. And it's such an exciting journey that I think people don't realize how much benefit there is. What I say is it like makes your highs higher and it makes your lows lower. If that's an interesting, if that's a relatable way to say it, it makes the good things in life even better, and it makes the hards even harder because you have more that can go wrong when your kids can get sick and you have to watch your kids suffer and you have to make these parenting decisions that aren't straightforward. You know what I mean?
I love it. Nick, before we close out, you've got a new book, so please tell people a little bit about it.
It's called The Sweaty Startup: How to Get Rich Doing Boring Things. And it is an official call out on Silicon Valley new idea, raise money entrepreneurship. I'm trying to convince people to do boring things, Zuby. The most visited page of my blog of all time is a list of 200 to 300 business ideas that I have. And they're not tech startups. They're not new ideas. You're cleaning something, you're repairing something, you're moving something, you're solving a problem for somebody. If people are interested in that, they can go to sweatystartup.com/ideas. That's just to get a feel for what this is all about. But I talk about how to hire, how to manage, how to delegate, how to make decisions, how to have discipline, how to run a company the right way, and how to build wealth, and also a little bit about what it's all about and some of the things that we're talking about right now. So that's my pitch. It's called The Sweaty Startup.
Awesome. And people can get it at the usual places?
Yeah, order it on Amazon. Type in The Sweaty Startup book and you'll find it.
Awesome. Nick, man, you're someone who I could talk to for hours and hours, but I want to be respectful of your time and we can have you back on again in the future. So thank you so much for coming on Real Talk with Zuby, man. It's been I feel like this one was long overdue and I've enjoyed this conversation.
It's nice to have a conversation with somebody where we can disagree on some of these things, but we can see each other's perspective. I think that's the way the world should be, my man.
100%, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on.